Most people never look twice at the janitor sweeping the floor. But when the engine of a student-built race car failed just days before the biggest competition of the year, it was him, quiet, unnoticed, forgotten, who walked up, laid a hand on the machine, and changed everything. This isn't a story about horsepower or trophies. It's about the code no textbook teaches, and the man no one saw coming. So before we dive in, if you love stories that inspire surprise and remind us where true wisdom hides, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you never miss a moment. Now let me tell you what really happened in the janitor code. They laughed when the janitor touched the engine, but he turned it on in under 30 seconds. The steel frame garage roared with frustration. "You've got to be kidding me," muttered Brian, slamming the wrench down onto the metal workbench. A sharp clang echoed through the cavernous space. Sparks still danced faintly on the concrete where the team had been welding a custom manifold just an hour earlier. The electric race car, sleek, silver, and silent, sat dead in the middle of the bay like a beautiful corpse. Third attempt. Same result, Lena said flatly, her eyes on the diagnostic tablet. Throttle signals fine, batteries charged, control modules active. But the motor, nothing. Maybe the motor controller's brick offered joules from behind the laptop, though he didn't sound convinced. "We don't have time to guess," Lena snapped. "The qualifying round is in 10 days. If we don't fix this now, we're not racing." That silenced the room. The Wolfpack racing team was made up of the best and brightest engineering students at Michigan Tech. For months they had lived on vending machine coffee and slept under the belly of that car. It was more than a machine, it was a shot at proving themselves on the national stage. And now it was silent. Behind them, the soft whir of a vacuum cleaner hummed along the far wall. None of them noticed. It was just the janitor again, mopping up the oil and carbon dust near the equipment shelves. He moved slowly, methodically, like someone who'd been here too long and expected nothing from the place. The kind of man students didn't bother to learn the name of. "Again," Lena ordered. Brian keyed the ignition module. Nothing. No whir, no hum, not even a flicker. "Let's call it Jules," said, tossing his hat onto a stool. "We've been here 14 hours. Reluctantly, the group agreed. One by one, they powered down their equipment, grabbed backpacks, and filed out shoulders, slumped beneath the fluorescent lights. Lena was the last to go, her fingers lingering on the car's roll cage like she was saying sorry. The garage fell into silence, save for the distant mop strokes. Noah waited until he heard the last door latch shut. He set the mop aside slowly, reverently, like it was made of glass. His knees creaked as he knelt beside the car. With a gloved hand, he brushed dust off the motor housing. Then he reached into his back pocket and pulled out a thin black tool roll, old-worn, stitched in leather, faded by time. He unrolled it like an altar cloth. With practiced fingers, he twisted open the side panel of the motor control unit. Inside, chaos. Wires crisscrossed, some heat shrunk poorly. Others soldered like a beginner had done them during a caffeine crash. He sighed. "No one teaches grounding theory anymore," he murmured. He reached up and disconnected the main power relay. Then delicately, he adjusted the Hall effect sensor alignment with a small screwdriver. 1 millimeter off could throw the motor's timing entirely. And it had. 30 seconds later, he backed away, wiped his hands on his coveralls, and reconnected the relay. Then he did something no one had seen him do in years. He smiled. A low hum emerged from the car. The dashboard lit up like a sunrise, and then a gentle whir, steady, clean, alive. The engine purred. From the far end of the garage, the security camera blinked silently. Upstairs, Lena sat frozen in her chair. She hadn't left after all. Something had held her back, a gut feeling maybe. She was sitting in the dark behind the glass of the observation room where professors usually monitored student testing sessions. And she had just watched the entire thing. The janitor, Mr. Miller, she recalled now from the time he'd returned a dropped ID badge, had not only diagnosed the problem in under a minute, he'd fixed what they hadn't in 3 days. The engine still hummed. Lena rose, slowly walked down the metal stairs back into the garage. Noah didn't turn as she approached. He was already rolling up his tool pouch. "That motor's misaligned sensor was throwing timing off," he said calmly. "You were flooding the control unit with error signals. It thought it was running but didn't know where it was, like a blind man on a racetrack." Lena stopped a few feet away. "How did you?" He looked at her eyes, calm but heavy. "Used to be my job. Long time ago." There was no arrogance in his voice, just fact. You were a mechanic, she asked. I was a lot of things, he said. He picked up the mop again, as if nothing had happened. As if the resurrection of their project wasn't the miracle it felt like. Lena looked at the car, then back at him. Can you teach us? She asked. Noah paused, grip tightening slightly on the mop handle. I'm just the janitor, he said, and began mopping again. But the engine still purred in the silence, and Lena knew nothing would be the same after tonight. The next morning, Lena arrived at the garage earlier than usual. The air was still heavy with the scent of rubber and engine grease, but it was quieter, too quiet. The silence gave her space to replay the night before in her head over and over again. The janitor, Noah Miller, that's what his name tag said, had brought the car to life in under a minute, then vanished back into obscurity like it was nothing. She stood alone in the middle of the garage, eyes on the now resting vehicle, the engine's faint hum still echoing in her mind like a ghost sound. She opened the control panel and verified everything was operating perfectly. The issue that had stumped 3 engineering students and 2 faculty advisors had been resolved by someone with a mop and a quiet voice. Who was he? A chime broke the silence, Brian walking in with his usual half-eaten bagel and a coffee cup in hand. You beat me here, he said, surprised. Car looks untouched. Sort of, Lena replied, her voice distracted. Brian walked closer, glanced at the diagnostics on her tablet. Wait, this wasn't like this last night. No, she said. Because someone fixed it. He blinked. One of the professors. Lena shook her head. The janitor. Brian stared at her as if she just said the coffee machine had tuned the engine. She turned the tablet toward him. He realigned the sensor offset, regrounded the control unit, and recalibrated timing all by hand. In 30 seconds. That's not. Brian paused, reconsidered, then lowered his voice. Are you sure I watched him? Brian let out a long whistle. Okay. Either he's a ghost from Tesla's basement or someone here's been seriously underemployed. Lena wasn't laughing. I want to know who he is. After class, Lena headed straight to the admin building. The woman at the front desk greeted her with a confused look when she asked for the personnel file of Noah Miller. Maintenance staff files or internal access only, the woman said. Why are you asking? Lena thought fast. He found a lost piece of school equipment. I'm trying to get him recognized by the dean. The woman nodded and clicked through her system. Noah Miller. Here he is. Employed 12 years. Never taken a sick day. Never filed a complaint. Lives off campus, East Rosewood, in one of those older cabins. Anything before that. The woman frowned. Looks like he was added to the system in 2011. No employment records before that. No education history. No background. That didn't make sense. Thanks, Lena said, scribbling the address down. The next afternoon, Lena found herself standing in front of a weather-beaten one-story cabin, nestled behind a row of bare maples, the late autumn wind stirring leaves across the gravel drive. A rusted mailbox hung crookedly at the edge. There was no car in the driveway. No sign of life at all. She hesitated before knocking. After a long moment, the door opened. Noah stood there wiping his hands on a rag. He wasn't surprised to see her. In fact, he didn't seem surprised by much of anything. You followed me, he said simply. Lena squared her shoulders. I want to know how you knew what to do last night. I listened. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. He stepped aside. You want coffee? She hesitated again, then entered. The inside of the cabin was not what she expected. Bookshelves lined the walls, stacked with thick engineering manuals, some dating back to the 60s. A full workbench sat beneath a wide window, where several disassembled carburetors and a V8 block rested in various stages of repair. Everything was meticulously clean, like a shrine to combustion and torque. But what truly struck her were the blueprints. Dozens of them pinned to the walls, drawn by hand. Custom suspensions, turbocharger systems, gear ratio experiments. Even a frame for a Formula chassis marked 1989. Lena turned to him slowly. This is not a hobby. Noah poured 2 mugs of black coffee and sat down across from her. I used to work for Thunderbolt Motors, he said, back when they were still building real race cars. Lena blinked. Thunderbolt? The team that broke the Indy lap record in '92, he gave a single nod. I was chief mechanic. She stared at him. Then why are you? Here his eyes didn't flinch. Because in that same race, a car I built killed someone. The air seemed to drop 10 degrees. Even the hum of the old fridge sounded louder in the silence. Noah continued, voice low. His name was Jason. 21. Youngest driver on the track. He trusted my work. I signed off on the modifications. One weld gave out in the rear left suspension during a turn at 180 miles per hour. Lena sat back, the weight of the words settling deep in her chest. I walked away after that, Noah said. Or maybe I disappeared. Doesn't matter much now. I came here to fix what I could. Quietly. I clean up after people. Feels fair. Lena met his gaze. But you're still building engines. Noah gave a half smile. Old habits die harder than reputations. She took a breath. We need you, my team. We don't just need a janitor who knows engines. We need someone who's seen the cost of getting it wrong. Noah's smile faded. He looked away out the window into the wind that blew dead leaves across the grass. I swore I'd never put my hands on another competition engine. But you didn't swear you'd stop teaching, Lena said quietly. He didn't answer. But that night back in the garage, Lena found a small paper envelope on the driver's seat. Inside it, a hand-sketched diagnostic diagram for the motor controller and 5 simple lines written in ballpoint pen, the janitor code. 1. Don't trust the numbers more than your ears. 2. Every sound means something. 3. Feel before you fix. 4. Respect the machine, respect the driver. 5. Don't race to win. Race to survive. Lena stared at the lines, heart pounding. Something had just begun. The next morning, the garage felt different. The usual chaos was still there. Laptops opened across tables, torque wrenches clattering on the floor, the sharp scent of electrical solder and hot aluminum in the air. But something unspoken hung among the students. They didn't know what Lena had seen or what exactly had changed, but when she walked in holding the envelope with the janitor code, no one cracked a joke. She placed the note down in the center of the workbench like a sacred text. What is that? Brian asked, leaning over it. Principles, Lena said simply, from a man who's forgotten more about engines than we've learned in 4 years. Brian read the lines aloud and for once didn't smirk. He wrote this, Lena nodded. Jules looked around. So, the janitor's our new coach. No, she said. He's not our coach. He's our mirror. Everything we do from here, he's going to see through it. So we'd better get real. Noah didn't show up that day. He was back on the job somewhere across campus, pushing a mop down empty corridors while the team worked off his diagram like it was scripture. For hours, they recalibrated the motor controller, manually running tests through an oscilloscope, checking pulses and field alignment, matching the diagnostics with the hand-sketched curves Noah had drawn. And for the first time, they understood the heartbeat of their machine, not just the metrics, but the music of it. That night, Lena returned to the cabin. She didn't knock. She just stood on the porch listening to the soft clicking of metal tools from inside. After a moment, the door opened. You're not used to asking twice, are you? Noah asked, wiping his hands on a cloth. I've learned some things lately, she said, stepping in. The room looked exactly the same. Except this time, Lena noticed the little things. The dents on the vice grip, the decades-old posters of long-defunct race teams, the Polaroids of pit crews in faded coveralls, one of them featuring a much younger Noah, arms crossed and confident. Was that Jason? Lena asked, pointing to a photo on the shelf. Noah didn't look. Yeah. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was reverent. Lena turned back to him. We've gone as far as we can without guidance. We've got talent, yes, but no instincts. We're building machines we don't know how to listen to. Noah sighed, then pulled something from beneath his workbench. A long, flat box wrapped in a greasy cloth. He opened it slowly, like unveiling something sacred. Inside was a thick black binder. Each page was yellowed, smudged with graphite, but still legible diagrams, handwritten notes, torque charts, failure analyses. Some pages were marked with fingerprints and oil spots, others with dates from decades ago. This, Noah said, is my library. 30 years of everything I learned, broke, or fixed. I stopped updating it after I left the track. Thought I'd bury it one day. He handed it to her. Lena opened the first page. Thunderbolt T17 rear axle shear test 1988. Her breath caught. You kept all this? He gave a quiet nod. Every mistake teaches more than a success. The trick is writing it down before the next one hits. She looked up at him. Why are you giving this to me? I'm not. he said. I'm lending it until you prove you can write your own pages. Back at the university, Lena called an emergency team meeting. She walked into the garage like she was holding the Holy Grail. Guys, she said, slapping the binder onto the table, we're rebuilding this engine. Noah's way, there were murmurs, skeptical glances. Brian raised an eyebrow. Wait, you mean from scratch? I mean, we tear it down to its skeleton and build it up the way they used to. No plug and play, no presets, just our ears, our hands, and a hell of a lot of respect. Silence. Then Jules shrugged. Well, we're either crazy or we're finally doing it right. Or both, Lena added, smiling for the first time in days. They started that night. Noah returned to the garage just after midnight. He didn't say anything, just stood in the shadows, arms crossed, watching the students work in rhythm, removing bolts with care, examining wear marks on connectors, polishing grounding points until they shone. The air was heavy with grease and focus. Lena looked up and saw him. He gave a slow nod. Then quietly he picked up a pair of gloves from the shelf, walked over, and joined them. Not as a janitor, as a mechanic. And something shifted. The garage wasn't just a workshop anymore. It was a classroom, a confessional, a place where past and future stood side by side, one rebuilding the other. Hours later, when the team finally took a break, Noah sat alone near the workbench, rubbing his hands together absently. Lena brought him a bottle of water and sat beside him. You could teach here, she said. I already am, he replied softly. You just don't get paid when you've made as many mistakes as I have. But that's why we need you, Lena said, because none of us know what it's like to lose something real because of a bolt. He looked at her, then eyes clearer than they'd been in years. I wasn't sure, he said, if I could be near a track again, near them, the sounds, the pressure. And now she asked. He looked down at his hands, calloused, stained but steady. I think it's time I stopped hiding behind a mop, Lena smiled. Then let's build something worth showing. Outside, dawn broke through the clouds, casting golden light through the garage windows. And inside, the sound of tools turning bolts was no longer noise. It was legacy in motion. The late autumn wind howled against the corrugated garage walls as the team gathered around the disassembled engine laid out like a puzzle. Each part had been tagged, clean cataloged. The new version of Wolfpack Racing was methodical now, slower, yes, but deliberate. Noah stood off to the side, not instructing, not commanding, just present. And yet everyone deferred to him. His silence was authority, his nod permission. Lena watched him carefully. There was a rhythm to the way he moved, a man who once held control over machines faster than thought, louder than storms. But in his eyes there was something else too. Weariness. A past never put to rest. She could see it in the way he hesitated before touching the frame, in how his gaze lingered on every bolt as though remembering where it might one day break. That evening, after the others had gone home, she found him alone in the break room, staring at a half-finished cup of black coffee and the wall clock ticking toward midnight. I know about Jason, she said quietly. He didn't flinch. He only sighed, deep and tired. How, he asked. You told me his name once, Lena said. It wasn't hard to find the rest. Thunderbolt Motors, 1992, Indianapolis. Car 27, driver Jason Miller, fatal suspension failure at turn 4. There were only two names in the official report, Jason's and his father's, chief mechanic, Noah Miller. I was 16 when he started racing, Noah said, voice rasping like gravel under boots. Everyone said it was too young, too risky. But he lived for it. The first time he beat me in a garage debate, I knew I'd either built a prodigy or a tragedy. Lena sat down across from him quietly. No notebook, no questions. Just a daughter's patience for a grieving father. He was fast, maybe too fast. He could hear a misfire just by listening from the stands. That last car we built together, Thunderbolt Falcon, was our masterpiece. Lightweight, overpowered, no safety redundancy. We thought brilliance could outrun consequence. He rubbed his temples. But I missed a micro fracture on the suspension arm. Just a tiny thread of fatigue near the joint weld. It gave out at 182 miles per hour. Jason never had a chance. Lena's chest ached. They blamed you. They didn't have to. I blame myself enough for everyone. His eyes were distant but clear. After that I left. Sold everything. Changed my number. Took a job cleaning the oil I used to spill. Why here? He looked around. Because kids come here to dream. And I needed to remember what that sounded like. Lena reached across the table and touched his hand. It was trembling, but he didn't pull away. I think she said gently, you came here to forgive yourself. You just forgot how. The next day, word of Noah's past trickled through the team. No one said anything at first, but glances lingered longer. Questions stopped halfway out of mouths. Jules, ever the cynic, finally asked what everyone else was thinking. So, we're learning to race from a guy whose last car killed someone. The room went still. Noah was at the far end of the garage calibrating the wheel alignment rig. He looked up slowly. Lena opened her mouth to speak, but Noah raised a hand. He walked toward them, wiping his hands on a rag, gaze steady. Yes, he said. You are. Jules shifted awkwardly, clearly regretting the question. But let me ask you something. Noah continued. What do you think makes a better teacher, someone who's never failed, or someone who's paid the price and still came back to teach you how not to make the same mistake? No one spoke. I won't ever ask you to trust me, he said. I'm here to help you trust yourselves. He turned back to the rig. The conversation was over, but the silence that followed wasn't discomfort. It was respect born not from awe, but from honesty. That weekend, Lena stayed behind after practice. She and Noah sat in the garage long after the others left, surrounded by the scent of burnt rubber and old dreams. Why did you keep racing after Jason died? She asked softly. I didn't, Noah said. Not really. But the world doesn't let you leave clean. You either run forever or you find a way to turn your failure into something useful. He looked up at her. You want to know the hardest part? It wasn't the funeral. It wasn't the headlines. It was waking up every day knowing my hands built the thing that took my son away. Lena swallowed hard. Then why pick up a wrench again? Because one day he said a girl walked into a garage and asked the janitor to teach her how to hear an engine breathe. He smiled faintly. And for the first time in 30 years, I remembered what hope sounds like. Lena didn't speak. She couldn't. Her throat burned. Her hands curled into fists on her knees. Outside, the wind howled again. Inside, something had shifted. Not in the car. In them. Tomorrow, the build would continue. The race loomed. But for now, under dim lights and walls lined with grease and ghosts, a broken man had finally said the one thing he couldn't bring himself to say for decades. He still loved the machine, and he was ready to make peace with the engine and with himself. Again, Lena's voice rang through the garage like a command from the control tower of a launch pad. Brian rechecked the torque wrench, gritted his teeth, and gave the bolt one more firm pull. A metallic click snapped through the air. Set, he confirmed. Jules flicked a switch on the dashboard. Controller linked. Throttle input ready. Start the run. The motor hummed to life. This time it didn't choke. It didn't stutter. The electric engine whirred with a deep, clean resonance. The tires spun slowly on the mounted rollers, then faster. The entire team erupted in cheers. Even Noah, sitting quietly in the corner with his coffee cup, allowed himself a small nod of approval. It had taken them 4 nights of rebuilding, troubleshooting, soldering, and testing, each failure more frustrating than the last, but finally the new system worked. The engine was speaking in a language they could understand. They were listening now, just like Noah had taught them. But nothing stays perfect for long. Not in racing, not in life. That afternoon, during a final systems check, a sharp pop echoed from the rear of the car. A haze of smoke hissed out from under the chassis. "Shut it down, kill power," Lena shouted. Jules scrambled to hit the switch. The room fell into a tense silence as they gathered around the back of the vehicle. "Controller's hot," Brian muttered, peeling back the casing with insulated gloves. "We lost the cooling node. Again." Noah was already crouching beside him. He touched the exposed heatsink gently as if it were a wound. Too much current, too fast. "You tune for power without sequencing the release load." Lena knelt beside him. "That was my call." "I didn't say it wasn't," Noah replied calmly. "I just said what it did." Jules stood a few feet away, arms crossed. "We should go back to the stock configuration. This system's unstable. I said it 2 days ago. You also said the janitor had no business near a race car," Lena snapped. Jules narrowed his eyes. "I still think we're playing with fire. That janitor just taught you more in 3 days than 2 semesters of simulation classes, Brian muttered. Jules took a step forward. Look, I'm not saying the guy isn't smart. I'm saying there's a reason he was erased from the industry. There's a reason no one's hired him since '92. How many more near failures before someone gets hurt again? The room turned ice cold. Noah stood slowly. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. You think I don't hear what people say about me? That I walk in shadows because I like the cold? His eyes locked on Jules, steady as a laser beam. Every day I live with what I didn't see soon enough. You think I want that for you? Jules didn't reply. Noah looked at the others. You think I'm here because I want redemption? No. I'm here because you deserve better than the shortcuts I once took. He walked away before anyone could respond. The garage was silent. Later that night, the team was fractured. Brian and Lena stayed late recalibrating the cooling system manually. Jules left early without a word. The rest drifted in and out, unsure whether they were still a team or just a bunch of skilled students orbiting a Legends Guild. Lena wiped her hands on a shop rag face smeared with carbon and disappointment. She hated this part, the doubt, the division, the weight of leadership when everything felt like it was slipping through your fingers. She found Noah outside sitting on the loading dock with an old socket wrench in his hand, spinning it idly like a coin. The wind was sharp. Leaves skittered across the parking lot like little ghosts. You okay? She asked. He chuckled dryly. I've been okay for about 25 years. It's a low bar. She sat beside him. You scared him. He needed to be scared, Noah said. He's good, talented, but confidence without caution is how people get killed. Lena looked at the wrench in his hand. Do you ever regret coming back into a garage? Noah was quiet for a long moment. I regret not coming back sooner. She studied him in the pale streetlight, the deep lines etched across his face, the hands scarred, stained, but steady. A man who had made peace with his tools, even if not yet with himself. We still want you here, she said. I'm not going anywhere, he replied. She smiled. Good. The next day, a quiet shift happened. Jules showed up at 7 a.m., holding a cup of coffee and a printout of a new cooling loop design. I stayed up all night, he muttered. I think we can reduce thermal overload by 30% if we reroute the resistor sequence through a staggered drain circuit, but it's gonna need manual testing. Noah didn't say a word. He just nodded, took the schematic, and walked to the workbench. An hour later, they were soldering side by side like old colleagues. By noon, the engine was running again. This time clean, cold, controlled. When it finally purred at full capacity without overheating, Lena let out the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. They were a team again, not perfect, but whole. That evening, as the sun sank behind the tree line, Noah stood alone in the garage, watching the vehicle gleam under the overhead lights. It was no longer just a student project. It was a living thing, every wire, every bolt a story, every sound a memory. Lena walked up beside him, quiet for a moment. You knew we'd get here, she said. No, Noah replied. I hoped you'd fight hard enough to earn it. He turned to her. The fracture line in metal, that's where the truth shows. Not in how you build something, but in how it breaks, and how you come back from it. She looked at the car, then at him. We're not racing to win anymore, she said. He nodded. You're racing to prove you've learned. They stood in silence, watching the garage lights flicker softly across the chassis. And in that moment, they weren't student and janitor. They were engineers, builders, survivors. The first snow of winter dusted the edge of the garage's windows as Lena opened the door that morning. Her breath turned to mist in the chilled air, and the light from the fluorescent overheads cast a soft halo around the half-assembled car at the center of the room. It was quiet, almost reverent. She found Noah already there. He stood alone at the far end of the bay, hunched over a small wooden crate, its corners worn and edges weathered from decades of being opened, closed, and carried from one life to another. He didn't hear her at first. When he finally looked up, there was a different weight in his expression, softer, more fragile. You're early, he said. So are you, Lena replied. I couldn't sleep, he admitted. She stepped closer. Is that? Noah nodded toward the crate. Jason's. Inside were fragments of another life, a faded fire suit folded with care, an old leather helmet with a cracked visor, and a handful of Polaroid photos from circuits long since decommissioned. Lena recognized one immediately: Jason behind the wheel of a car marked with the Thunderbolt logo, his face lit with adrenaline and joy, one fist raised in the air as confetti rained down. He was a better driver than I ever was, a father, Noah murmured. Lena's eyes softened. He was lucky to have someone who believed in him. I didn't believe enough, Noah said. Not when it counted most. That race, the one that killed him, he didn't want to run it. He said something felt off, but I pushed. Said we had sponsors press everything riding on it. I made him ignore his instincts. He ran a hand down the edge of the fire suit, fingers trembling. When he died, I told myself I'd never teach again. Because if I couldn't protect my own son, how could I ever protect someone else's? Lena sat beside the crate. The scent of oil and old leather drifted through the air. You didn't stop teaching, she said quietly. You just stopped letting anyone call you teacher. Noah looked at her then, really looked. And for the first time since they met, Lena saw a man not just worn by grief, but healing from it. Later that afternoon, the team gathered for their first full system integration test. Noah stood to the side, arms crossed, watching silently. He wasn't one for instructions anymore, only observation. And yet the room moved like a symphony under his gaze. Brian mounted the telemetry sensors. Jules rerouted the power regulator under the cockpit, triple-checking each contact point. Lena monitored the throttle delay curves on her tablet. Every hand knew its purpose. Every voice was calibrated to function. When the power switch flipped and the motor kicked on without hesitation, the cheers weren't loud, they were satisfying. A shared breath held and released. We're ready, Lena said. Not to Noah, not to anyone in particular, just to the air itself. But Noah nodded anyway. That night, Lena found herself walking the halls of the engineering building alone. Her fingers brushed against the cold railings of the staircase, her thoughts returning again and again to the look on Noah's face beside that crate. She wandered toward the university archives, an old wood-paneled room buried in the basement level, and typed Noah Miller into the digital records terminal. Nothing. Then she tried Thunderbolt Motors. Thousands of entries. She narrowed it by year, 1992, then by incident report, then by vehicle chassis. Finally, she found it. Falcon 27 structural analysis, failure report. There it was in stark black and white, a fatigue fracture along a secondary weld masked by an unusually resilient outer coating. Not human error, a supplier flaw. Something impossible to detect at the time without today's imaging. She stared at it, heart hammering. He didn't kill Jason. He just believed he did. The following morning, Lena walked into the garage with the report in hand. She found Noah beneath the car, adjusting a tension rod by flashlight. I found something, she said. He slid out grease on his hand's forehead streaked with carbon. She held out the file. Noah hesitated. What is it? Proof. You didn't miss anything. The weld was flawed from the manufacturer. There's no way you could have seen it. He took the folder with shaking hands, flipped it open, and read. As his eyes moved across the page, Lena saw the smallest shift. His jaw tightened. His breath hitched. When he looked up at her, his eyes were glassy. I spent 30 years carrying that. I know. He lowered the report. I don't know if this changes anything. It doesn't have to, Lena said. But maybe now you can stop punishing yourself. Noah chuckled weakly. I'm not sure I remember how. Well, she smiled. Lucky for you. I know a pretty good teacher. Later that day, the team surprised Noah. They cleared a space in the corner of the garage, swept and polished the old metal flooring, and rolled in a stool and a wheeled cabinet stacked with neatly labeled tools. Above it, they hung a simple steel plaque, freshly laser-etched. Noah Miller, engineer in residence. Below it, 5 words in smaller print: don't race to win, race to survive. Noah stared at it, stunned. Jules was the one who broke the silence. We figured it was time someone put your name back where it belongs, Brian added. We don't want a legend. We want our mentor. Noah turned to them and for a long moment didn't speak. Then he cleared his throat. Well, he said, voice catching, looks like I'll need a better stool. Laughter broke the tension. It was real, pure, and in that warmth surrounded by the future, he had helped shape Noah. Finally stepped out of the shadow of his past. Not to forget it, but to honor it. By becoming what he always was, not just a mechanic, not just a father, but a teacher. For the first time in months, the Wolfpack garage pulsed with purpose, not from pressure, but from belief. The transformation wasn't in the car, though the vehicle itself had evolved into something leaner, smarter, almost predatory. It wasn't in the equipment either. It was in the team, the way they moved, the way they spoke. They weren't just building a machine anymore, they were building a legacy. And at the center of it stood Noah. No longer just the janitor who haunted the edges of the room, he now took his place at the bench with sleeves rolled chalk in one hand, caliper in the other. His voice was steady sure, sometimes dry, sometimes amused, but always grounded in wisdom. Take the torque off the lower control arm, he told Brian, who was now more mechanic than student. You're twisting the bushing instead of pressing it through the angle. Brian grunted, readjusted, and nodded. Got it. On the other side of the car, Jules was sprawled out beneath the chassis with Lena, both working on the battery box heat shielding. I'm still not sure this is going to work, Jules muttered. That's what you said about hand-tuning the motor controller, Lena replied, and now it hums like a lullaby. Jules exhaled a laugh. Fair. Above them, Noah leaned down with a schematic. You're over-insulating here. Let the battery breathe or you'll choke your current delivery. Heat isn't your enemy, imbalance is. They adjusted accordingly. In a corner of the garage, chalk diagrams covered the whiteboard cooling loop, optimizations, motor torque-to-ratio experiments, and most central of all, a 5-point diagram written in bold black marker. The janitor code underneath it, someone had added in pencil. This garage listens. That afternoon, Noah surprised the team with something unexpected. I want you all to take the night off, he said. Jules looked at him like he'd lost a gear. What do you mean off? I mean no tools, no blueprints, no simulations. Just a walk, a movie. Something that reminds you the world is more than carbon fiber and lap times. Lena tilted her head. Is this a test? Yes, Noah said. It's the one where you prove you're human. It wasn't easy, but they did it. They left their tools on the bench, the vehicle on its stands, and for one night lived like students again, ordering pizza, playing pool, at a local dive bar, arguing over whether the Falcon or the Viper had the better 90s legacy. And when they came back the next morning, they were sharper than ever. Over the next week, Noah introduced a new challenge. I'm not fixing anything else, he announced. Brian raised an eyebrow. Wait, what you've got, what you need. Tools, notes, instinct. Now I want to see if you've learned how to listen without me whispering in your ear. Jules folded his arms. That's terrifying. That's real life, Noah said. And so the team began its first solo rebuild. No guidance, no corrections, just intuition backed by training. They tore the car down completely, chassis to frame, electronics to wires. Not because it was broken, but because Noah had taught them that understanding something meant knowing how to build it from nothing. Every part was a test, every bolt a question, every adjustment a conversation between student and machine. There were mistakes, a misaligned mount, a connector improperly seated, a failed sensor test. But each time they worked through it together, checking Noah's notes, reviewing the code, asking not what was wrong, but why it went wrong. It took 3 days. And then finally the car stood again, sleek, responsive, reborn. Lena turned the key. The engine purred. Not loud, not flashy, but balanced, confident, true. She looked across the garage. Noah was leaning against the far wall, arms crossed, the barest smile on his face. You passed, he said simply. That night, Lena found herself staring at the empty whiteboard after the others had gone. Noah approached, hands in his coveralls, his gait slower than usual. You knew we'd tear it all down, she said. I hoped you would, he replied. Racing isn't about adding more. It's about removing everything you don't need until only the truth remains. Lena nodded. You think we're ready? He looked at the car, then back at her. I think the car is ready, he said. Now it's your turn. She frowned. What do you mean? Up until now, you've built this thing with your hands. Next, you've got to drive it with your heart. Lena blinked. I'm not our lead driver. You should be. I haven't trained. You've trained more than anyone. You listened to its first breath. You felt its silence. No one knows this machine better. She was quiet for a long time. Then finally she nodded. The next morning, as the sun crept up over the Michigan skyline, Lena zipped herself into the fire suit that had been waiting for her all along. The team rolled the car onto the test track. Frost glistened on the asphalt, but the skies were clear. Noah stood at the pit line, clipboard in hand, eyes sharp and proud. As the car rolled to a stop beside him, Lena slid down the visor and gave a thumbs up. Noah stepped close, placing a hand on the carbon fiber frame. "Trust what you built," he said, "and more importantly, trust yourself." She nodded once, pressed the pedal, and the machine answered with a rising hum like a lion waking from slumber. Noah stepped back, and as Lena tore off down the track, the others cheering behind her, he whispered something only the wind could hear. "Race to survive." And with that, the janitor walked back into the garage, his home, his classroom, his redemption. The morning sun stretched long shadows across the concrete floor of the Wolfpack garage. Outside, snow had begun to melt into thin rivulets, the last breath of winter slipping into spring. Inside, the team was silent, watching. Lena stood next to the whiteboard, marker in hand, staring at the words they had lived by for weeks now. 5 short lines written in clear block letters. The janitor code: 1. Don't trust the numbers more than your ears. 2. Every sound means something. 3. Feel before you fix. 4. Respect the machine. Respect the driver. 5. Don't race to win, race to survive. Beneath it, the newest edition in faded pencil. This garage listens. She capped the marker and turned to face the team. Today we stop being students. Today we prove this car isn't just a machine, it's a message. They nodded, not with excitement, but with conviction. Brian double-checked the torque settings on the front suspension. Jules synced the telemetry feed with the university system. Even Miguel, the freshman they barely trusted with a wrench at the start of the semester, was now expertly managing tire pressure. The car's sleek matte black with cobalt stripes was more than rebuilt. It was reborn, and tomorrow it would race. But today was about something else. Noah stood back, arms crossed, watching them, not as a mentor, but as a peer. For the first time in decades, he wore a clean, crisp set of coveralls, with his name stitched in bold white thread, Miller. Someone had left them on the bench that morning with a note. Once a builder, always a builder. They moved to the university's outdoor test track just after noon. The wind was low, the asphalt dry. Lena stepped into the cockpit and lowered her visor. Her heart pounded, not from fear but anticipation. She had become the machine's voice. Every vibration beneath her fingertips told a story she now understood. Noah knelt beside her before the test run. "This isn't about the stopwatch," he said. "This is about trust." "I know," Lena replied. "I trust her. And I trust you." He smiled. "Then you already won." She gripped the wheel. "Let's see what she can say." The motor sparked alive, smooth, responsive. The car pulled forward like it wanted to run. And then it did. Down the straightaway, she let it stretch. Around the first corner, she eased into the turn, not dominating the car, but flowing with it. Noah's voice echoed in her mind. "Don't force, feel." The car responded like a partner, not a servant. The second lap was faster, the third cleaner. By the fifth, it was poetry, machine, and driver in perfect sync. The telemetry lit up in the garage feed like a symphony of numbers, and even Jules let out a whistle. "She's shaving 3 seconds per lap," he muttered, without redlining anything. Brian laughed. "She's not racing, she's dancing." Noah didn't speak. He just watched and smiled. After the final lap, Lena rolled to a stop at the pit line. Steam hissed softly from the motor casing. Not panic release. She climbed out and ripped off her helmet, her face flushed with wind and pride. The team swarmed her. Cheers, slaps on the back, wide grins. But Lena looked straight at Noah. That, she said, breathing hard, was the best conversation I've ever had. Noah nodded. "Then you're ready." Back in the garage, as evening fell, Noah stood alone once more at the whiteboard. He read the code again, line by line. Each one now felt heavier, realer, not because they were written, but because they had been lived. He took the marker in hand. For a moment he hesitated. Then below the 5th rule he added a 6-6. If it breaks, listen harder. He stepped back. Behind him, Lena appeared with 2 mugs of coffee. She handed him one. "Good addition," she said. "You think they'll need it?" Lena smiled. "We all do." Eventually. They stood in silence, sipping their coffee, the garage humming around them with quiet satisfaction. "Tomorrow's the qualifier," she said. "I know. Are you ready?" Noah didn't answer right away. His eyes traveled over the car, this machine that had nearly torn the team apart and now bound them together. I think, for the first time in 30 years, I am. Lena reached into her pocket and handed him something. It was a sticker, white letters, blue border. It read, "Janitor certified." I had it made, she said. "For fun?" Noah chuckled. "Put it on the engine casing." "You sure?" He nodded. "Right where it belongs." As she placed the decal, small, unassuming, but perfect, on the engine cover, the garage filled with a quiet kind of pride. Not loud, not bragging. Earned. Noah looked at the team, each member tired, grease-streaked, exhilarated. They weren't just builders anymore. They were listeners, interpreters of steel and silence. And by tomorrow night, if the world was watching it, wouldn't just see a student team with an electric car. They'd see a code, written in bolts, driven by belief, and built by a janitor who never stopped hearing the truth beneath the noise. The sun rose with a kind of hushed reverence over the state qualifiers, its early rays shimmering across the freshly swept tarmac of the Grand Rapids International Speedway. It wasn't just any race weekend, it was the race weekend. The paddock buzzed with tension, camaraderie, and the unmistakable smell of rubber coolant and ambition. Student teams from across the state had arrived in matching jackets, towing custom-built race cars polished to a mirror finish. Sponsors hovered. Professors took notes. Nervous hands adjusted torque wrenches one last time. And at the far end of pit row, unbothered by the noise or the showmanship, was Wolfpack Racing. Noah stood quietly beside the car, watching Lena adjust her gloves, as if preparing for a symphony, not a storm. The rest of the team moved like a unit, disciplined, focused, matured. There were no raised voices, no chaos, just quiet competence. Telemetry's green jewels reported. "Tire pressure optimal," said Brian. "Tracks warming up faster than expected. Good grip. Torque sensors in range." Miguel added, reviewing the tablet. "Nothing out of spec." Lena stepped into the cockpit. "Everything feels good." Noah walked over and leaned against the side rail. "Then let her do what she was built to do." She gave him a tight smile. "We're not the fastest car here." "Maybe not," Noah replied. "But speed isn't the only thing that wins races." Lena exhaled slowly. "Janitor code." He nodded. "All of it." She tapped her helmet. "It's in here." He stepped back. The call came over the loudspeakers. Heat 1. All drivers to the grid. The starting line was a theater of nerves. Cars lined up in staggered formation under a cold blue sky, their frames glinting like weapons. The engines purred, each with its own voice, some cocky, some angry, some restless. Wolfpack's car was silent, not out of fear, out of confidence. When the green flag dropped, the world blurred into motion. Lena launched off the line with control, not fury. Two cars surged ahead, no surprise. Their builds were designed for short sprints, all torque, no grace. But she held steady, easing into the first bend with surgical precision. Noah stood at the pit wall, headset on, voice calm. "Inside line. Let them overshoot." Lena obeyed. One of the cars ahead braked too late, its tires screeching wide into the runoff zone. "Gone." "Nice," Jules murmured from the control station. "That's one." Lena settled into a rhythm, listening, responding. Every vibration beneath her feet, every twitch in the steering, every hum of the motor was a conversation she could now interpret. Third lap, in the second car ahead began to fade. Overheated. It had pushed too hard too early. Noah's voice crackled through. "He's fading. Take him on the back straight." Lena did. She was in second place now. First was still a full 5 seconds ahead, Team Velocity, the reigning champions. Their car was gorgeous, aerodynamic, vicious, built like it hated you. Lena wasn't chasing them. She was chasing balance. Midway through lap 5, something shifted. The throttle response dropped, not dramatically, but enough for her to feel it. A tiny lag, half a breath, a hesitation that wasn't there before. Lena frowned. "Noah, I'm feeling drag on acceleration. Slight drop off throttle." Noah's voice was immediate. "Check battery temp, moderate, holding steady. Brake heat, no spike." A beat of silence. "Then you're overdrawing current on long corners. Too much Regan. Back off on the second apex." She adjusted. The car smoothed out like butter on a warm pan, but it cost her speed. Lap time's dropping, Jules said. By 2/10. Brian leaned forward. Do we call her? And Noah's face was stone. Then he said calmly, no. We trust the build. We trust the code. By the final lap, Lena was still in second but closing. One mistake from velocity. That's all she needed. Coming into the final corner, the lead car twitched. A lockup. Barely noticeable, but in racing, barely was everything. Lena didn't pounce. She waited. She remembered Noah's voice. Don't race to win. Race to survive. She eased off, half a second stayed tight on the inside. And sure enough, Velocity's rear end skidded wide by inches enough to open a sliver of daylight on the inside line. Lena slipped through it like water. When she crossed the finish line, the pit wall exploded with cheers. But it wasn't because she'd won. She hadn't. She'd placed second by half a second. But she'd finished flawlessly, clean, without incident, without overexerting the machine or herself. Every lap had been within a 3-second window. Every corner a lesson executed to perfection. It was the most disciplined drive of the day. Back in the pit, the car rolled to a stop. Lena climbed out breathless. The team swarmed her high fives, grins. Someone shoved a water bottle in her hand. Then Noah appeared. He said nothing, just reached out a hand. She took it. I didn't win, she said. You did, he replied. You beat the only opponent that matters. She tilted her head. Your own doubt. He nodded toward the car. And you brought her home in one piece. She looked back at the machine, its body streaked with track dust paint, scuffed but humming gently in the cool air. She smiled. We did it, she whispered. And Noah, with a quiet pride that needed no announcement, simply said, You're not just racers now. You're builders. And the race wasn't over. It was only just beginning. The regional finals arrived faster than anyone expected. 2 weeks after the qualifiers, the Wolfpack team stood beneath towering grandstands at the Michigan International Speedway, staring out at a track so wide, so polished, it felt like stepping onto the stage of an opera. This wasn't just a race. This was Judgment Day. 22 teams from around the Midwest had earned their place here. Carbon fiber beasts gleamed under stadium lights. Logos of sponsors were plastered across side panels, some worth more than the cars themselves. Most teams arrived with private trailers and corporate engineers. Wolfpack arrived in 2 borrowed vans, a trailer welded from scrap, and a car built with the wisdom of a man who hadn't touched a race tool in 3 decades. Lena stood by the car, eyes closed, helmet in hand. Breathe in, she whispered. Listen. Beside her, Noah leaned against the pit wall, arms crossed. His expression was calm, but Lena knew better. His fingers tapped silently against his sleeve, 5 beats a pause, then 5 again. The same rhythm he used when counting a cold start. It was his tell. He was nervous. You still haven't told me what that means, Lena said quietly, glancing at his fingers. He stopped mid-tap and chuckled. It means I'm trying not to shout instructions at someone who already knows what she's doing. Lena smiled, then turned serious. This is bigger than us. Noah nodded. So make it simple. Race like the car matters. Race like you matter. She turned to the others. Jules gave a confident nod. Brian handed her a clipboard with the race schedule. Miguel adjusted her visor before she even asked. They were ready. Then came the storm. It didn't start with rain. It started with the smell, hot wiring, ozone, and smoke. A flash from pit box 12. Team Velocity. Their lead engineer shouted, "Shut it down, disconnect battery now." The car's sleek, brutal Infamous had suffered a catastrophic short during diagnostics. One inverter had fried. The cooling system hadn't caught it. Flames licked the edge of the rear housing before fire extinguishers rushed in. The team scrambled, horrified. Whispers spread like wildfire. Lena looked at Noah. That could have been us. He nodded grimly. You can build for speed, or you can build for balance. That's the choice. Jules stepped up beside them, tablet in hand. We're up in 15. Noah turned to the car. Go do what she was made to do. The race began under overcast skies. The announcer's voice boomed across the stands, calling out team stats and sponsors. Cameras panned across the starting line as the cars in Heat 3 rolled forward, Wolfpack among them. Lena slid into the driver's seat, helmet on, harness locked. The hum of the motor was steady, alive. First lap, Lena stayed conservative, testing grip, warming the tires. She wasn't here to impress, she was here to endure. The others blasted ahead. Noise, swagger, overcompensation. By lap 4, one had spun out. By lap 6, another overshot turn 4 and skidded into the gravel. Lena held her line. "You've got fuel efficiency to spare," Jules said over the radio. "Telemetry shows optimal battery use. You're pacing perfectly." Then it happened. Lap 7, final turn. A shudder in the rear axle. A hiccup, barely a second. But Lena felt it like a note out of key in a familiar song. "Noah," she said calmly. "Something's wrong." In the pit, Noah's eyes sharpened. "What do you feel? Small delay in acceleration out of corner exit. Slight vibration on decel." Jules chimed in. "Diagnostics don't show a failure." "Because it hasn't failed yet," Lena said. "It's whispering." Noah didn't hesitate. "Pull her in." The call raised eyebrows. They were holding third, but no one argued. Lena rolled into the pit lane. Brian and Miguel jumped into action. In the moment of stillness, Noah crouched by the rear wheel and laid a hand on the carbon panel like a priest listening for a heartbeat. "She's running too tight," he said. "Check the strut. Tension might be off by a millimeter." The others hesitated. "You heard him," Lena said. 30 seconds. They moved fast. Wrench, caliper, adjustment. The stopwatch ticked. 28 seconds. Brian reattached the panel. Miguel gave a thumbs up. Lena rolled back out. Back on the track, 2 cars ahead of her were faltering. One was slipping under throttle, the other struggling with heat buildup. Lena didn't push. She waited. Then in the final lap, with less than half a mile to go, both opponents braked too hard into the final turn. Lena didn't. She eased through, like Noah taught her, like the car asked her to. She crossed the finish line, second again, by 7/10. But when she returned to the pit lane, the entire team was waiting, not with disappointment, but with awe. They hadn't just finished. They had survived. Clean, intelligent, whole. Noah stepped forward, wiping his hands. 30 seconds, he said softly. "That's what saved you." Jules stared at the data. "If we hadn't caught that, the strut could have locked up on the last turn." "Or worse," Brian added. Lena looked at the car, still humming softly. "She told us, she said. We just had to listen." Noah looked at her, and for the first time since stepping back into this world, the weight behind his eyes seemed lighter. "You didn't just build a car," he said. "You built a team that can hear." Lena smiled, and this time when she reached out, it was her hand on his shoulder. "You were never just a janitor," she said. And you, Noah replied, "were never just a driver." As the team packed up, the sky broke open with light snow, soft, silent, a reminder of where it all began. In silence, in listening. In 30 seconds, that changed everything. It wasn't about the trophy. Lena knew that the moment they stepped onto the stage to accept their second-place medals. The applause was warm, genuine, but distant, like polite claps at the end of a classical recital. The team from Northwestern had taken first. Rightfully so. Their car was lightning fast and surprisingly stable, backed by a $500,000 budget and 5 professional consultants. But none of that mattered, because standing beside the Wolfpack car with her team flanking her, Lena felt something deeper than victory. She felt vindication. In the audience, Noah stood a few steps behind the barrier, arms crossed, wearing his coveralls like armor. He wasn't smiling, not outwardly, but his eyes held the quiet gleam of a man watching a burden finally lift from his shoulders. And for the first time in decades, he stood in a garage, not as a ghost of failure, but as a builder among builders. The following Monday, the garage was strangely quiet. No urgent repairs, no cramming for deadlines, no midnight coffee-fueled debates about torque curves. Just the gentle rhythm of a broom sweeping the floor, echoing in a space that had for months been alive with transformation. Lena stood in the corner looking over the car. It sat on its lift, scuffed and streaked with proud battle scars. Stickers from the race still adorned its side, Wolfpack Racing, finalist, but someone had added a new one beside the engine port. Janitor, certified, built to be heard. She smiled. Then she turned as the shop door creaked open. Noah walked in carrying a small, neatly taped cardboard box. "Leaving already?" Lena asked. He gave a half smile. "I've been leaving for years. Just never had the guts to say goodbye." She tilted her head. "So don't." He chuckled softly. I've got another garage down the road that needs a floor swept. Maybe a young kid who thinks Torque is a brand of energy drink. It's time. Lena stepped closer. You could stay. Teach officially. Be on payroll, have an office. Noah looked around the room, the whiteboard still covered in sketches, the shelves stacked with tools, the smell of engine grease, and discovery still lingering in the air. I already got what I came for, he said. I watched a team that didn't know how to listen learn how to hear. That's more than most teachers ever get. He handed her the box. What's this? She asked. My binder. The old one. She blinked. You're giving it to me? No, he said. I'm passing it on. Lena opened the lid. Inside, pages yellowed with age sketches in pencil grease-stained corners, handwritten footnotes about failures, insights, adjustments. But something was new, a final page clipped to the top. The Janitor Code, Final Revision 1. Don't trust the numbers more than your ears. 2. Every sound means something. 3. Feel before you fix. 4. Respect the machine. Respect the driver. 5. Don't race to win, race to survive. 6. If it breaks, listen harder. 7. If it hurts, you're still learning. Lena looked up, eyes wet. You added a 7th. Noah's voice was soft. Took me 30 years to admit that pain's part of the process. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then we're going to keep building. I know, he replied. And you'll teach someone else someday. And when you do, make sure they know this. Machines may not have hearts, but the people who build them always do. He turned toward the door. But before he left, Brian and Jules walked in, stopping him. You forgot something, Jules said. Noah raised a brow. Brian stepped forward holding a sleek black plaque. Laser etched across the surface, Noah Miller, Engineer, in Residence 2024. Every fracture line tells the truth. For a moment, Noah said nothing. Then he looked at them, at Lena, Jules, Brian, Miguel. Even the wide-eyed freshman who had barely spoken to him, but now looked at him like he was carved into the walls of the garage. And he did something no one had ever seen him do. He teared up. He didn't try to hide it, didn't wipe it away. He just stood there, eyes full, letting the moment be. Because this wasn't redemption. This was recognition. That evening, the garage emptied out. The team had gone for celebratory burgers and cheap soda, leaving the lights on for Lena, who stayed behind. She sat alone at the workbench, Noah's binder open in front of her, flipping through the pages like a sacred text. Diagrams turned to notes, notes turned to memories. And then she reached a folded slip of paper tucked between 2 pages, a handwritten note. Lena, you didn't need me to fix the car. You just needed someone to believe it could be done. Never underestimate the power of listening to machines, to teammates, and to yourself. Keep the garage honest. N. She smiled through the lump in her throat. Outside, a soft engine hum faded into the distance. He was gone, but he'd never truly leave. Because some legacies aren't etched in trophies. They're written in chalk, burned into brake dust, etched into carbon fiber frames, and whispered through machines that were built not to shout, but to speak. And now finally someone was listening. Spring came slowly to Michigan that year. It crept across the campus in cautious steps, melting frost from windowsills, coaxing lilacs into bloom, and warming the garage one golden ray at a time. The world had turned subtly, gently into something new. But in the Wolfpack garage, one thing remained constant. The hum of tools, the soft murmur of engines, the scent of steel and sawdust, mingling with fresh coffee and possibility. Lena stood at the workbench, sleeves rolled up, a smudge of grease on her cheek. Before her sat a new chassis, sleek, unpainted, full of promise. Surrounding her was the next class of builders, freshmen who still mixed up calipers and compressors, wide-eyed juniors who thought speed solved everything, and the core crew who'd lived through every inch of the journey. They weren't just building a car, they were building a future. Okay, Lena called. Let's review the updates on the Torque converter mod. Jules raised a hand. We're still arguing whether your idea improves efficiency or just makes it sound cooler. It's both, Miguel grinned, which is why we're keeping it. Laughter. The good kind earned unforced real. Lena smiled, but her eyes drifted toward the old plaque still mounted on the wall. Noah Miller, Engineer in Residence. Every fracture line tells the truth. It hadn't moved. Neither had the sticker by the engine bay janitor certified, and neither, it seemed, had the feeling he'd left behind, like the scent of oil soaked into concrete. Permanent. Integral. Brian walked in from the hallway holding a small padded envelope. "This came in the mail," he said, handing it to her. "No return address." Lena opened it carefully. Inside, a weathered wrench, brass-handled, balanced perfectly. Alongside it, a note. "Thought this might come in handy again. P.S. The kid I'm working with now insists bolts don't need torquing if you do it with feeling. You'd like him. N." She laughed softly and passed the note around. Jules shook his head, grinning. Guy vanishes like a ghost and still manages to make a dramatic entrance. "No," Lena said quietly. He made an exit. A proper one. She placed the wrench gently onto the workbench like it was a torch being passed. That evening, the team gathered under the soft glow of string lights they'd strung across the garage ceiling. It was their end-of-year celebration. Tables were dragged in covered in snack soda cans and trophies, so dented they'd become endearing. Lena stood up with a paper cup in hand and the room quieted. "I don't have a long speech," she said. "Just a story." She turned toward the new students. "A year ago, this garage was falling apart. The car didn't start. The team didn't trust each other. And honestly, I wasn't sure I belonged behind the wheel." She looked toward the plaque. "But then a man with a mop and a memory walked through our lives and reminded us of what matters, not how fast we build, but how deeply we listen. Not just to machines, but to each other." A few heads nodded. A few eyes glistened. "He didn't teach us how to win," Lena continued. "He taught us how to fail with grace, how to rise with purpose, and how to carry stories in every weld we make." She raised her cup. "To Noah, wherever he is. May he always find good tools, honest students, and clean floors." "To Noah," they echoed. Later, as the night wound down, Lena stayed behind in the garage alone. She moved quietly through the now still space, pausing at the workbench, then at the car, and finally at the wall. She uncapped a marker. Below the janitor code, still printed in block letters, she added one more line. 8. Pass it on. Always. She stepped back, hands in her pockets, and smiled. Because she knew now this story didn't end with an engine turning over or a race result. It ended in moments like these, quiet, full of weight and wonder, where people choose to build not just machines but meaning. Outside, the first fireflies of spring blinked to life in the darkness. And in the silence, Lena could almost hear him again. Not his voice, but his presence carried in the creak of a ratchet, the rhythm of footfalls on concrete, the hush of a machine held just right. Some legacies are loud, some are lightning, but the best ones, they're a whisper that stays with you long after the last sweep is done. Now we'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from, and what part of the janitor code spoke to you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. And if this story moved you, made you smile, or reminded you of someone who always believed in you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories just like this. Thank you for spending your time with us. We're grateful you're here, and we hope this story stays with you long after the credits roll. Until next time, keep listening, keep building, and keep believing.